They gave us 72 hours to evacuate Earth. We spent it building weapons. Fleet Admiral Mordek of the Veth Imperial Fleet was a practical man. He had reviewed the intelligence assessments on Earth's defense capability and found them, as expected, inadequate. Not catastrophically. The humans had demonstrated unexpected resourcefulness in individual engagements, but strategically, a planet with no standing orbital weapons platforms, a single functioning fleet component, and a population that had never been tested against a full planetary assault. The Veth Imperial Fleet had 800 ships. It had conducted 7 planetary pacification operations in the past century. It knew what it was doing. He had transmitted the ultimatum at 0600 hours. 72 hours for full planetary evacuation. 6 designated neutral zones with guaranteed safe passage. The terms were not punitive. They were, by the standards of galactic military history, remarkably humane. He was not trying to destroy Earth. He was trying to resolve the Veth-humanity conflict in the most efficient and least destructive manner available. He had expected, based on every behavioral model in his intelligence files, one of 3 responses. Negotiation. Defiance followed by negotiation. Or compliance. What he had not modeled was the 4th option. At hour 12, Earth's defense networks, which his intelligence files reported as sparse and largely inactive, went to full operational status in under 4 minutes. Not activated. Not deployed. Activated from standby. As if they had been waiting. His tactical officer looked at the readings and said, Sir, this is not consistent with our assessment. What is it consistent with? She looked at the display for a long moment. A significantly more prepared planet than we thought we were dealing with. Run the assessment again. She did. The result was the same. Hour 36. 6 orbital weapons platforms came online. This was, on a simple factual level, impossible. Orbital weapons platforms of the scale his sensors were reading required months of construction, significant resource mobilization, and specialized manufacturing capability that his intelligence files, comprehensive intelligence files, maintained by a service that had operated in the Sol system for 60 years, listed as not present on or near Earth. His intelligence officer came to him with a face that would have, in a less formal service, been described as pale. The platforms, she said. I see them. They shouldn't exist, sir. Clearly they do. I mean, our assessments were, she paused, with the expression of someone choosing her words carefully. Our assessments were based on what we could observe. It appears that what we could observe was not the complete picture. He looked at the 6 platforms on his tactical display, analyzed their configuration, tried to correlate their design with any known human spacecraft manufacturer. His analysis system returned unknown configuration. He sent the analysis system through diagnostic. It was functioning correctly. The platforms were a design his system had never seen before. His tactical officer said, very quietly, Sir, they might have been building these before the ultimatum. He looked at her. Before, he said, the construction timeline for platforms of this scale, even at maximum mobilization, would require a minimum of 6 weeks. Possibly more. She met his eyes. We gave them 72 hours. He looked at the display. 6 platforms that, by his intelligence files, didn't exist, that were online and operating at hour 36 of a 72-hour deadline. They were already building, he said. They may have been building for a while, sir. From the surface of Earth, the 72 hours looked different. Admiral Chen had been awake since hour 1. She had not, in fact, slept much in the week before hour 1, because intelligence had been reading Veth fleet movements for 3 months, and she had been making preparations that did not appear on any inventory an external observer would have access to. The defense networks that went to full operational status at hour 12 had been, in fact, at partial operational status for 6 weeks. The activation at hour 12 was the final sequence of a process that had been running in distributed quiet across 47 facilities on 3 continents. The 6 orbital weapons platforms at hour 36 had been in final stage construction for 11 weeks. The design, which would return unknown configuration to any Veth analysis system, was a human design built specifically for this moment by an engineering team that had spent 18 months designing systems that would not match any galactic standard database. We knew they might scan us. The lead engineer, Dr. Peta Havilai, had told her team at the project kickoff, "We're not going to give them anything to match. Every system is custom. Every component is spec'd to our own standards. Their databases are going to see something they've never seen, and they're going to have to figure out what it is from first principles." She had paused. By the time they figured it out, we want to be in a position where they'd rather stop figuring. The platforms had come online at hour 36 instead of hour 48 because the construction teams had worked without sleeping. Every shift double-staffed. Every bottleneck pre-identified and pre-solved. The engineering core had been given a deadline and had treated the deadline the way human engineering teams treated deadlines that mattered. Not as a constraint, but as a target to beat. Hour 48. 3 additional platforms. Different design from the first 6. Different configuration. His analysis system again returned. Unknown configuration. He was beginning to understand that unknown configuration was the point. At hour 50, a ground-based transmitter he had not previously tracked began broadcasting on military frequencies. The broadcast was encrypted, which was expected. What was not expected was the encryption protocol, which his decryption system identified as not matching any known cipher architecture. They had built their own encryption standard. He called his intelligence officer. "How long were they working on this?" he said. "On the platforms?" "Months, minimum." "On the encryption architecture?" She paused. "The signal patterns suggest a standard that was established before our intelligence began comprehensive monitoring. Possibly years ago." He looked at the tactical display. 8 platforms. Custom design. Unknown configuration. Ground-based systems he'd missed. Encryption he couldn't break. And a planet that had been given 72 hours to evacuate and had, apparently, spent the time finishing construction projects that had been running for considerably longer. "They knew we were coming," he said. "They knew someone was coming," his intelligence officer said. "I'm not certain they knew it would be us." At hour 71, the transmission came through from the UES Relentless. He had expected Commander Solis to be involved in this. She had been involved in every significant human engagement since the beginning of the conflict. She was, by this point, as close to a strategic variable he'd modeled as anything in his intelligence files. He had not modeled the tone. "Fleet Admiral Mordek." Her voice was calm, the specific calm of someone who has verified that things are going well before beginning to speak. "I notice we're coming up on hour 72. I want to check in. How's your analysis going?" He said, "You did not evacuate." "No," she said. "We finished building. Want to recalculate." He looked at the tactical display. 8 platforms. Unknown configuration. Ground networks fully operational. 347 additional orbital assets that his system was still attempting to categorize. His fleet of 800 ships in formation, weapons hot, ready to execute. He ran the targeting analysis. The system took 4 minutes. He had never seen a targeting analysis take 4 minutes. His system ran analyses in seconds. The system returned its recommendation. Asterisk recommend withdrawal. Engagement probability of favorable outcome. Insufficient data. Engagement probability of unfavorable outcome. High. Recommend withdrawal pending further intelligence development. Asterisk. He read this 3 times. His tactical officer was very still. "Sir," she said, "I see it. The system is recommending." "I see it." He looked at the display. 8 platforms, unknown configuration. His system couldn't model them because it didn't know what they were. You can't fight what you can't classify. 800 ships against 8 platforms of unknown capability and an unknown number of ground assets that his files hadn't identified. The math was no longer what it had been at hour 0. He opened the channel. "Commander Solis, we will be repositioning for further consultation with Veth Command." A pause. "Safe travels, Fleet Admiral," she said. He closed the channel. He filed the report at hour 73. He had spent an hour writing it, which was a record for him. He was usually a fast writer. Asterisk strategic repositioning report. Veth Imperial Fleet. Sol System Asterisk. Asterisk upon approaching the Sol System with the intent to execute Directive 7-4. Our fleet encountered defense infrastructure significantly in excess of prior intelligence assessments. 8 orbital weapons platforms of unknown design configuration were identified at hour 36 of the operational window. An additional 47 orbital assets of unknown classification were identified by hour 60. Ground-based systems previously undetected were confirmed operational at hour 50. Encryption systems encountered during the operation do not correspond to any known cipher architecture. Asterisk. Targeting analysis returned insufficient data for favorable engagement probability assessment. Decision. Strategic repositioning pending further intelligence development and command consultation. He paused, then added, asterisk note. Intelligence assessment files should be updated to reflect that Earth's defense infrastructure exists and is substantially more advanced than documented. The discrepancy between prior assessment and observed capability suggests either significant intelligence failure or deliberate concealment by the subject civilization for an extended period. Both possibilities should be treated as the basis for revised threat assessment. Asterisk. Asterisk further note. The timeline analysis suggests that several of the observed platforms were in construction prior to the issuance of our ultimatum. If accurate, this indicates the subject civilization was engaged in substantial defensive construction independent of our specific operational timeline. The ultimatum window, 72 hours, did not create their defensive capability. It may have completed it. Asterisk. I recommend we do not repeat this error. He submitted the report and sat in his command chair for a long time. He thought about 800 ships and a targeting computer that had needed 4 minutes to admit it didn't know what it was looking at. He thought about Dr. Havilay's engineering team, somewhere on Earth, presumably sleeping now, having beaten their own deadline. He thought about Commander Solis. Asterisk, we finished building. Want to recalculate. Asterisk. In Sol Fleet's after-action record, Yara Solis's log entry for the engagement was 3 lines. Asterisk, Veth Fleet departed at 0600 hours, hour 73. No engagement. Systems operating within normal parameters. Weather in Nairobi, partly cloudy. Asterisk. She had noted the weather because she'd been talking to Yemi Adeyemi's team earlier in the week and had made a joke about checking in on the Category 7 Deathworld conditions. The note had no operational significance. She had, technically, logged it as Tuesday. Down on Earth, Dr. Havilay's team held a quiet celebration. Not loud. They were, as a group, more inclined toward data review than celebration. But they opened something carbonated and stood around their engineering floor and looked at the 8 platforms on their monitoring display and said very little. Havilay said, "Good work. Everyone sleep." They slept. The platforms remained online. In Chamber 0, Solène read the Veth repositioning report and made a note in her ongoing strategic analysis. Asterisk pattern consistent with previous observations. Subject civilization responds to constrained resource windows by exceeding projected output. Recommended protocol update. Do not give them deadlines. They treat deadlines as targets. Asterisk. She attached it to the file she'd been building for 3 years. The file was titled, in her own shorthand, Why Managing Them Was Always Going to Fail. She was beginning to think about a different